5 days, I guess, of early voting under our belt. 8 days of voting left, 10 days in this primary season. Got started in this race on February 11th. My name's Debra Medina. I was born Deborah Parker in Beeville, Texas, town of about 13,000. As a child growing up, we had a naval air station there and an ag economy. Daddy worked for the phone company. We had a little small 4-acre place that we lived on, a couple of milk cows, some hogs, chickens, horses, sheep. I think that's it. Got off the school bus every day at 4:30 and went in and ate a meal. We called it a snack. Everybody in town called it a meal because it was 5 courses, and then we went out and worked till dark, and then we came in and ate supper. And we got up and caught the bus at 6 o'clock the next morning. Fortunately for me, I was the oldest of 4 kids, and I was one of those students that didn't have to study. I could pull the A's without doing too much homework, because I don't know when we would have squeezed it in. My brothers and my sister were not quite so fortunate. They were the B and C students in the family, but we all got by, and we learned the value of hard work early in our life and honesty early in our life. My father was a real stickler for keeping your word. You didn't have to have a signed contract or a notarized statement. If Daddy told you we'd be out there building a fence next Saturday morning, it didn't matter if it was 113 degrees or if it was sleeting and 12 degrees, we were out there building a fence. It wasn't about convenience, it was about keeping your word. Grew up and went to junior college and got an associate in science degree and went off to nursing school got an associate science degree, got married, went off to nursing school, came home, had a baby, started working. 5 years later, my husband and I moved to Wharton, Texas, where we have raised our family. And early in our life in Wharton, a pastor said to me, "Deborah, you should go to the precinct convention." And I asked why, and he said, "You just need to go." In my second political cycle, I went to the county convention and saw something that pastor could have never convinced me would have happened. And that was, I watched the deacons of my church defeat the pro-life resolution in the Republican Party platform. And I did that. I was one of those individuals, I am one of those individuals who grew up in a Catholic home, and I knew Catholics to be pro-life, and I graduated high school in 1980, and I voted for Ronald Reagan, and President Reagan really made that kind of a key element of the Republican Party ideal, and I just kind of believed. I said I knew some things. I knew that the sun came up in the east and set in the west. I knew life began at conception, and I knew that even before I went to nursing school, but then I got all that anatomy and physiology stuff, and I really understood that life began at conception. And so 10 years later, when I'm sitting in a convention and I see the deacons of my church, who I would have absolutely expected to be as committed to the pro-life idea as I was, vote to remove that, what I thought to be a cornerstone of Republican political ideology from the platform, it slapped me pretty hard. I say it set the bit for me politically. It was the thing that caused me to really see that our freedoms would be lost. Things that I held dear would be gone if I wasn't paying attention, if we weren't all paying attention to public policy, debate, and discourse. And I began to get involved in, and that was the early 90s, and I've been very involved in my neck of the woods, if you will, since District 18, which is along the Gulf Coast of Texas since the early 90s. And in that process have spent 20 years not just helping elect Republican candidates, but really trying to be provocative enough to get people off of their couch and out of their easy chair and get them to political things and get us engaged and participating. And in that process over the last 2 years, I was traveling more and more around Texas and training people that were coming for the first time to the political world. When I first became a county chair, people came to me and said, "Deborah, I'm really ready to get involved in politics, and I just don't know where I should go. Should I attend the school board meeting or the city council meeting or the county commissioner meeting. Just what should I do? And I thought, you should go to the library because you're kind of scary. And so I spent 20 years trying to say we've got to understand. I think so often we elect people who, in their zeal to do good, pass laws that destroy the very freedom they think they're up there to protect. And that, as I watched and I helped elect these folks, we've been talking about, since I've cast my first vote, we were going to get rid of the Department of Education at the federal level, and we were going to get rid of the National Endowment of the Arts, and we were going to limit government, and government grows and grows and grows. We worked really hard in Texas. Those of you that would claim to be Republican, we worked really hard in Texas to get a Republican majority in Austin, not just statewide leaders, not just a governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker, but a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate. And remember, they were going to fix public education. When we had that first majority, we were going to get public education reform. And no sooner than the legislature convened, the House Committee on Public Ed chairman came out and said, we want to spend $13 billion in the next biennium on public ed, and all the conservatives in the state went, more money. And the answer, we've been saying that about public education for years. We just keep getting bigger and bigger government. And then 9/11 happened in our country, and I had another awakening. I'm a registered nurse by profession. I know those of you that are in healthcare know better than most that life changes can change on a dime. Families leave the house that morning and everybody's fine, and somebody's in an accident in the middle of the day and their life is changed instantly. And when 9/11 occurred, it taught me the life of a nation can change instantly. And we've been asking these candidates the wrong questions. As someone who's also been in administration, and those of you that have to hire and fire for your company, you know how important it is that you do a very good job in the hiring process, and yet we get these candidates in front of us in the hiring process, and they all know the buzzwords. This cycle, everybody's going to be about the Constitution, and they're going to be conservative, and they're going to be against Obamacare, and they're going to be against Washington, and they're going to be against the bailouts. The people who voted for the bailouts are against the bailouts. You know, we're not asking the right questions. And I began to say, I think the question we've got to be asking people first is, do you understand freedoms that protect, policies that protect freedom, and those that destroy it? Do you know the difference? I have thought that when the isms come to America, socialism, communism, Marxism, fascism, we think that that candidate's going to have purple spots or look like a leper, and we're going to recognize them for the fascists or Marxists that they are, and instead those ideas come subtly. Do you know the difference? Early in this campaign, I was able to interview with a man named Gabriel Bruzon. Mr. Bruzon is the editor for a Spanish-language newspaper in Austin, Texas. And Noe and I, my husband and I, grew up in South Texas. Lots of Hispanics in our part of the state, Gonzaleses, Garcias, Pettis, a few Medinas. I'd never met anybody last name Bruzon, and I was very curious about the origin of his name. Here he was, the editor for a Spanish-language paper, and he told me that he was from Cuba. And I thought, oh my, how did you get out of Cuba? He said, well, I'm a Christian, and I was a missionary to Ecuador. From Ecuador, I immigrated to the United States. And thinking that we wouldn't recognize communism when it came to America, I said to this man, if I had taken a picture of you standing on the street in communist dictatorship Cuba, and I took a picture of you today, 3 years later, standing on the street in Constitutional Republic, Austin, Texas, what's the difference between the man in Cuba and the man in Austin? And he said the man in Cuba had no dreams. Everything was free. Healthcare was free, education was free, but we had no dreams. I couldn't plan where I would live, where I would work, where I would go. We had no dreams. And I thought, boy, if I had to tell anything about America today, that's the story to tell. Our government is taking and taking and taking